Unless you have been living under a rock for the past 3 years, you will know that the way in which farm subsidies are paid here in the UK is changing. This video is designed to tell you how and why. It would have been so much easier had all the devolved nations of the UK actually decided to work together on this, but there is literally a snowball's chance in hell in that actually happening. Anyway, I'm not getting into politics. There are a ton of links, guides and resources associated with all this stuff, and I've included the best ones that I found for this video in the description below. Firstly, a little bit of background. Most of you will remember this, which was Brexit, which seemed to drag on for about 4 years and then get caught up in the drama of COVID. But leaving the EU means that the UK is no longer part of the EU's Common Agricultural Policy, which was the main agricultural subsidies programme for countries within the EU. It was introduced in 1962 and was predominantly a food production policy, and it benefited UK farmers to the tune of £3.5 billion every single year. Having left the European Union, the UK government now sees this as, and I quote, a once-in-a-generation opportunity to shape English agricultural policy to suit our needs, wants and priorities. What the fuck does that mean when it's at home? Well, DEFRA have said that by 2028, they want to see a renewed agricultural sector producing healthy food for consumption at home and abroad, where farms can be profitable and economically sustainable without subsidies, and farming in the countryside contributing significantly to the environmental goals, including addressing climate change. DEFRA believes that the current EU area-based direct payment schemes offer poor value for money, rewards those with the most land, inflates rents and stands in the way of new entrants. Now that is pretty damning stuff. But I'm not here to argue it one way or the other. Whether you like it or not doesn't fucking matter. We're just going to have to get on with it. If you're a farmer in England and you're complaining about DEFRA or the glacial pace of elms or the confusion around all this stuff, just stop and thank yourself lucky that you actually have a plan in place to deal with this stuff. DEFRA have announced that basic payments over a 4-year period are going to reduce between 2021 and 2024, as can be seen in this graph, after which they're going to be replaced by D-linked payments from 2024 through to 2027. A DEFRA study showed that 60% of net farm income comes from basic payments, so this shows you the scale of which farmers and farms rely on this income and the impact that it's going to have once it's removed. In order to replace the income lost through basic payments, DEFRA have introduced a series of schemes including ELMS, which is the Environmental Land Management, lump sum exit scheme, animal welfare schemes as well. There are a ton of them which I'm not going to go into, but I'll include a link in the description below. Before we get stuck into the devolved nations, I should add that whilst there is a distinct lack in detail, particularly compared to England, the trajectory is all very much the same. The trajectory from Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland are all looking towards a shift to environmentally sustainable farming whilst tackling the climate crisis. They're all just doing it in their very own special way. It kind of feels a little bit like coronavirus, and where the UK government said, well, you can only meet in groups of 6, but the Scottish government said, well, you can meet in groups of 5, for no reason other than just to be a little bit different. Anyway, there is some degree of hope through the UK Agricultural Support Framework, which basically means that all the devolved nations are agreeing in some shape or form to work together on all this. As I mentioned before, Scotland are still consulting their way towards a deadline, but in 2022 they released the consultation on the agricultural bill, which is designed to make Scotland a global leader in environmental and sustainable regenerative farming. The scheme is designed to be implemented in 2025, so landowners and farmers in Scotland will still have access to 100% of BPS payments up until the end of 2024. Like every other consultation that's ever been delivered, the details are pretty thin on the ground. It gives hints towards a 4-tier system and where farmers are paid for a variety of carbon reducing practices, but with no indication as to the amounts that they'll actually receive or whether this will be enough to cover the reduction in BPS payments. This is all set in the backdrop, of course, of another possible Scottish independence referendum, so much so for once in a lifetime that could happen in 2023, and if it does, then Christ knows where we are. Just like the World Cup rugby rankings, Wales are dragging their heels behind Scotland at the minute with any transition plan, with consultation again being the buzzword of the day. In July 2022, Wales released the hotly anticipated Sustainable Farming Scheme with again detail very, very thin on the ground. Like England and Scotland, the scheme's geared around, and I quote, rewarding farmers for action to address nature and climate emergencies alongside sustainable food production. Like Scotland, the BPS payments are going to continue until the end of 2024, after which the SFS scheme is going to be introduced. And full details again on this in the link below in the description. Northern Ireland, Christ, this would honestly have been so much easier if people actually worked together on this sort of stuff. So the Northern Ireland Department for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs, which is very slightly different to DEFRA, released a consultation in February 2022 around the future agricultural policies for Northern Ireland. Christ, you can see a bit of a recurring theme here, can't you? Laughably, they actually produced an easy read report, which only runs to 21 pages, but it has got an amazing ability to say a lot and very little at the same time. The level of detail in this is practically non-existent, and it's hardly worth me actually stating anything on this video, but there is a link in the description below. So what does this actually mean for landowners and farmers in the UK? Well, wherever you are and whatever kind of farm that you've got, you are going to be impacted by these changes in the agricultural transition. Farm subsidies in the form that we know them are going to disappear, and the income that comes with them. The message from all parties, wherever you are in the UK, is that farmers need to assess the impact that these changes are going to have, act on them, and decide what is the best future course for their business. Get started now if you haven't already, and do not put it off for another day. It's vitally important to talk to your family and your friends, your bank manager and your accountant as to what impact all of these changes are going to have on your business and the succession and the future of your business as well. There are a ton of good resources, guides and information on all this stuff, and I've included the best ones that I found in terms of putting this video together in the description below. I've not been paid by any of the companies to put them there. It is just resources that I found really useful, and hopefully they will benefit you and enable you to plan for the future of your business. Any comments, suggestions or updates, then please stick them in the comment section below.